Okay, well, I wanted to show you one of my first builds for armor, and it's the M16 here from DML, Dragon. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience and then talk to you about why I chose this vehicle. This vehicle and another one I'm going to show in the same video both sort of represent, if you will, a reawakening of my enjoyment of models. So I want to start with the beginning, really. As a child, I built a mix of aircraft and tanks, like many of us did. And of course, like many of us, we also took a break around our teenage years, and I picked it back up in my 20s. You know, I really stopped because I noticed I was entering a lot of contests and I was really building always with the contest in mind, and I kind of felt like I was losing something of the hobby, some of the enjoyment of it. So I picked it back up in my 20s. Now I was in a position to be able to afford models and enjoy models more after that break. And at this time, I was building exclusively aircraft. And I'm not quite sure why that was. I suppose I just liked them more at the time. I was getting fairly good at it, although I was building about 2 a year, maybe even less, because I have other interests and other pursuits that I'll also talk about on this page. And then all of a sudden the COVID quarantine hit, and that really changed everything for all of us, of course, but it changed everything in terms of my hobby. And it all started with this one here, the Dragon M16. This is actually a kit I won about 10 years prior at a raffle at a contest. And at that time, like I said, I was an aircraft builder. It was one of the few things on the table, though, that I actually really wanted. I've always loved the half track. I built one as a child. And I find much of the time I am choosing subjects based on things that I'd enjoyed or wanted to build as a child. There's something about that nostalgia, and it rings true all throughout many aspects of the hobbies that I enjoy. So I won this kit and I had it in my stash, and it just kind of sat there. I think at one point I started a little bit on the chassis. Very complicated kit. There was a lot of parts, a lot more than I had been used to, even with aircraft, especially with aircraft. And I think even as far as half-track kits go, this has one of the most numerous parts. But I decided to bring it back out about a week into quarantine. At that point, I think we all thought, oh, it'll just last a couple of weeks. So I thought, let me give it a try, see how much I can get done in this short amount of time. I ended up finishing it because, of course, quarantine lasted longer, and it took me about a month. And I really enjoyed the kit. I was able to do some techniques that I had learned as a kid, like dry brushing, but then I also got into other effects, other weathering effects, really, streaks, and I was doing color modulation, where we do different levels of the same base color, and then I was also doing the color modulation with streaks of oil paints in many different shades, so reds and greens and blues and yellows, and sort of streaking them and then removing much of the oil paint itself to get this sort of faded, semi-faded, semi-discolored effect. So I was able to do a lot of techniques with this kit. I had a lot of fun with it. I have some of the aftermarket bags and crates that we like to use. I believe the company is called Value Gear. I bought a couple of their stuff. Really enjoy it. I find the buckles to be a little bit, large, or something's just not quite right in the look of them. But I added some tarps, rolled up bags, and the antenna. I decided to create a new antenna here and have it actually bend at the post rather than just simply bending at the on the aerial itself. I believe these are springs, so I decided to have it bend there. I was looking at some photographs of it. Anyway, there are a couple other details that I added to the vehicle. I almost never build out of the box, just the straight kit. I'll usually modify something in the vehicle. And I did a little bit of that here and there. Had a lot of fun, and it really kicked off an entire string of builds after this point. So what happened next was, as I was getting near the completion of this kit, is when I decided to look for my next inspiration. I was just looking around on Amazon or looking at other sites, and immediately found a photo of a Humvee, and just all of a sudden got this terrible bug to just get one and build it. And here is what I ended up doing. It's the M1025 from TAMIYA. Get this in here. All right, M1025. Outstanding kit. This is, I mean, in my opinion, it is one of the most enjoyable kits to build. It is so easy to put together. It is convincing in the vehicle. It is a real joy. And I had just an absolute blast of it. I remember I could barely wait for those 3 days. I was waiting for the delivery of the kit. I was so jonesing for it. I just could not wait. And ended up getting a new airbrush. Up to that point, I was using a siphon feed, the old Pache H, and I had used that for years. That's the only airbrush, in fact, I've ever used. And knew I needed to upgrade. Decided to go with the Badger Renegade, which is a siphon feed, and have been using that since. Really, really enjoy that airbrush. So yeah, here is the Humvee. I've always loved the NATO camo. I knew I wanted to do NATO camo, so I did it. Very pleased with how it turned out. I went straight with the Tamiya shades. Found them to be a little bit darker, perhaps, than some of the photos I've seen. Really had a blast. So got some nice effect on the tires. Didn't do much in the way of weathering. I wanted to keep it fairly clean, as if it was stationed on a base on the 80s. Hadn't really been tested yet. Hadn't been put through its paces. Yeah, and someday I'll build another Humvee. I've got another, I think it's a 1046 standing by, waiting to be fully assembled. But yeah, this is here. Let's see, a couple things that I added to it. The windshields there was quite a bit of flash on them, so I needed to take them down a bit. Let's see, springs. The springs here, these are not kit springs. I took pieces, I think they're paper clips. Yeah, pretty thick paper clips, and wound them around a piece of brass rod, I believe. Wound them around to get just the right angle. Took a couple of tries. I think for each one, this was the second try. And I like how it turned out. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think the lights here look great. Again, very pleased. It's largely due because it's really such a great kit. I decided to take the side view mirror here, and as I'd seen in some photos, it looked like they would remount it on its side. Probably be easier for the driver to see the mirror, so I decided to add that element to it. But otherwise, straight out of the box. Really fun kit. All detailed up in the interior. We can't really see it through the windows, but full interior in there. Yeah, so this really kicked it off, and from this point on, I would build a vehicle, whether it's AFV or a Jeep or a truck. I would build one a month. To this day, in fact, I'm still building about a model a month. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that I'm now building armor. Aircraft, for some reason, they took just such a long time. And I'm getting a lot more enjoyment in the hobby by building these. And I'm appreciating them just as much as I ever did aircraft. And I decided to, at one point, I went ahead and got the Tamiya F117A, the stealth fighter. I recently picked up an F4 Wildcat. So I am trying to get my wings back, so to speak, in aircraft. but the appeal for vehicles like this, military vehicles, is just too strong right now. So yeah, it's a little bit about me, a little bit about the builds that I've been working on. These again were from 2020, March and April. And then I will post another video with the builds that came subsequently after this. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour of the two builds that really got me back into building. Here they are. The DML M16 and the TAMIYA Humvee. Thank you for watching.